Pigs in a blanket, fry like bacon. Pigs in a blanket, fry like bacon.
Sure looks like a war on cops is erupting in America. Another officer murdered on the job this week, this time in Illinois. In Pennsylvania, a female officer assaulted, then thrown over an embankment. And if it's not violence, it's violent rhetoric from those protesters chanting pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon, to social media messages suggesting cops might deserve it. And this in Ferguson, Missouri, a picture of a roasted pig wearing a cop hat and Officer Darren Wilson's name written on it. So how can the brave men and women we pay to protect us do their job if they're under attack? Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Bolling. Welcome to Cashin In, our Cashin In crew this week. Wayne Rogers, Jonathan Honig, Michelle Fields also joining us, Juan Williams and Jessica Tarlov. Welcome, everybody. Surprise, surprise. A new report this week says police recruitment numbers are down big in some big cities. Now, Michelle, are we starting to see the effect of the war on cops?
Yeah, we have a war going on here in our streets against the very people who risk their lives to protect us. And, you know, what's happening is a lot of these police officers feel as though they can't do their job. They're not thinking about the issue and situation at hand. Instead, they're thinking, well, how is this going to look on Twitter? How is this going to look on the news? Because that's how it's become. They can't do their jobs without people constantly criticizing them for the way that they handle it. And it's also bad in terms of their danger. We're saying that there's a war on these people. People do not respect them, and we have to remember these are people who are risking their lives and making a sacrifice for them and their family to protect their community.
Now, wait, I want to throw up a graphic, guys. Throw up that map with some of the big cities that are seeing massive increase in homicides this year. Austin, Texas, really 91% increase in homicides. Denver, 75% increase. Milwaukee, 70%. St. Louis, 58%. We know about St. Louis. Also, Baltimore, 53%. So some major cities here seeing some massive increases in homicides. Wayne, any correlation?
Yeah, Eric, there sure is. I mean, there's a whole war out there on authority. We have developed somehow, and I don't know how, in this country, this hostility towards authority, towards the police, towards anybody, towards the school teachers, towards people who are in authority. Now, I understand it in the black community because 70% of black kids are born out of wedlock. They don't have a father figure, and they don't have anybody to discipline them. I can understand that. I do not understand it otherwise. And when we think about things like this, the press is guilty of it too. I mean, for example, Peggy Hubbard. People don't talk about Peggy Hubbard. Do you know who Peggy Hubbard is? No, nobody here knows who Peggy Hubbard is. She's the mother of the 6-year-old who was shot randomly in Chicago last week. I mean, it's just terrible.
Jessica mentioned Peggy Hubbard just a minute ago to me. Go ahead, Jessica.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, Peggy Hubbard, besides the great tragedy that she suffered, raised an important issue, and that's black-on-black crime. And that's something that I think the Black Lives Matter movement, which has an important message about the need for criminal justice reform in this nation, but they're also not speaking to the issue of black-on-black crime, which takes far more lives than police violence does. But I know that we've discussed this before as well, and I know that Juan has been speaking to this issue about how the Black Lives Matter movement can capitalize on making their message broader and to talk about systemic poverty, the totality of the black experience in America, the need for education reform.
John, hang in there because I want to bring this to Juan. There's something else that happened last year. Juan, listen to this protest. Listen to what they're saying. Go ahead, roll it. Now, that was New York, Juan, and they were protesting. They said, what do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them? We want them now. We know what happened within days of that protest. Take a look at this picture. This is Officer Wenjin Liu and Officer Ramos, who were killed. They were executed by a guy who came from Philadelphia and said, I wanted some dead cops. We're seeing the fallout, and it's an ugly fallout, Juan.
You know, this is so much a fabrication. I don't even know where to begin, Eric. There was no connection between a few protesters in New York saying they wanted dead cops because they were so under siege in terms of the relationship between cops and minority communities in New York, and some psycho who then decides he's going to shoot.
The Black Lives Matter isn't just a few. It's not just a few. They're blocking roads. They're stopping businesses from stopping people from going to school and work.
Eric, let me make this point because you keep making another point that's just totally unsupportable, which is, oh, because somebody said pigs in a blanket, it's somehow responsible in Minnesota or wherever they were.
Culture.
I think St. Paul.
The left,
it's responsible for the death of a cop in Houston.
Juan.
Well,
and it happens
listen,
at a totally
I'm
different
not.
time.
I'm simply stating the fact. We're going to report. You can decide whether or not.
That's not a
When
fact.
you
What
see
you're stating is
protesters
made up.
protesting for dead cops, and 5 or 6 or 7 days
Eric,
later there are 2
Eric,
executed
let me just
cops.
Say, Eric,
I didn't
let's
say
look
it
at
was
the numbers.
causal.
You got 32 cops killed last year at this time, only 28 this year, and the rhetoric is amped up, and you want to make it somehow
I knew you were going to bring
connection.
that stat up because you're right. That stat is correct. However, what you failed to mention in that stat, Juan, I'm going to go and bring it to John, but the problem with that stat is that last year was a highly elevated year. So taking one of the most murderous years for cops in history and going off that and saying, oh, it's better than last year, that's a false narrative right there.
The rhetoric got ramped up this year, Eric. Eric, you have nothing to support. You just don't like the facts.
But
the facts are, Juan. The facts are.
This started with the Occupy movement. We've been seeing this anti-cop rhetoric since the Occupy movement.
All right,
so this is not something that just started.
Guys, let me just jump in. The facts are that last year was an elevated year as far as law enforcement getting killed. I mean, you can look up the facts. To use that as your base is unfair. Let me go, John, your thoughts. Weigh in on this debate.
Well, this is the next step of the angry, violent left, Eric. I mean, in the 90s, it was the Earth Liberation Front. They were against industry. In the 2000s and more recently, it's been the Occupy movement, which is against capitalism. And this movement, if you want to call it that, I really think it's against civil society. That's what police are. They keep us safe. And I think they depict all police, and by extension, all society, as illegitimate, as racist, as immoral. And their goal, I truly believe, is anarchy. And in many cases, we've seen it on the streets of America's biggest cities.
The Black Lives Matter movement, they are disorganized. I will admit that. I think that anyone would admit that. But since they had their confrontation with Hillary Clinton about 10 days ago, where she said, tell me exactly what you want. Give me the policies. They have released a 10-point...
But
that's not what they want.
Jessica,
They are an anti-violent movement. They should defy what has
Jessica,
happened.
you're saying that's not what they want. We just showed you chanting for dead cops. We just showed... Look at the pig. Can we take a picture of the pig again? What do you think they want? What do you
really think that they are out just to kill cops? I mean,
they're not. No, Jessica. It's not. They're not saying that they want to kill cops. I don't actually believe that the entire movement wants to kill cops, but they're perpetuating this idea that America is a racist country, and it's not. I mean, that's absolutely false, and they're creating this idea and creating social unrest.
The black experience in America is horrific on the whole.
Yes.
They are more likely to live in poverty. As Wayne brought up, I think it's actually 72% of children are born to unwed mothers.
But the idea that
our school system is still segregated, Michelle.
Come on.
All right, so can I get Juan in here? Juan, please jump in.
Well, I just don't understand. I mean, there's such an America that we know that struggles with racial issues if you are black, if you are Latino. I think even in terms of women. So how can you deny these things? But nobody says that's a reason to attack police.
Right.
Police protect my community. Let me just tell you something. As a black man in a big city, police protect me in a way that you wouldn't believe, because guess what? The prime threat to me is other black men.
Right,
so I'm just telling you, nobody is saying, but you can't use that as justification then for any cop to stop me, harass me, and beat me up, and then you say, oh, well, gee, Juan wasn't like the rest of them. Why'd they beat Juan up?
Well, Wayne, go ahead. You have your hand up.
Yeah, as I said before, this is a cultural problem. It's not a racial problem. And until we fix the culture, you can't fix this. And you've got to start fixing the culture. You've got to start fixing the culture at its basic level, where the families are. The family has to take responsibility. And if you don't do that, you're never going to beat this.
John?
Yeah. And I think Wayne actually brought up something very appropriate prior, is that this is really I don't like the term war, but it's let's just say hostility towards authority. So the fact that only a tiny minority of cops are illegitimate, a tiny minority of cops are corrupt, doesn't matter at all to these people. They see all cops, all authority as racist, as malevolent, as out to get them. And that's the real issue in America today.
But Jonathan, really quickly, I just want to ask you, Jonathan, don't you think that there's a legitimate issue where you see police using excessive power and authority and sometimes killing people who are unarmed? And don't you think if you say, hey, we have an issue with police and it's legitimate, it's not an antagonistic, nobody's calling on cops to be killed, we're calling them on to be held accountable.
Of course, Juan, and you have an issue with those tiny minority of corrupt police officers, but I just think it's disingenuous to paint all forces in America as being of that ilk.
All right, we're going to have to leave it right there.
That's fair.
We really need to leave it right there. Okay, View Crew, let's use our massive group voice for some good. How about we support the men and women who keep our streets safe? There's a war on law enforcement that the left is waging, in my opinion. Let's let them know we conservatives stand with law enforcement. Tweet your support for the men and women in blue. Add hashtag Wake Up America and add hashtag Blue Lives Matter. Tweet and Facebook those comments right now. Coming up, we're hitting the streets this Labor Day weekend to find out what hardworking Americans think about big labor's push to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
I don't think that's fair. And I think it's also, you know, if you raise minimum wage, everything is going to cost more too.
It will bring more, obviously more taxes incoming, and, you know, it'll be more money for New York to spend, basically, so why not?
You're basically giving people a boost in pay not based on necessarily merit.
That'll be good for a few people, but there's going to put a lot of people out of business.